Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 24th of July 2013. Now today's show is going to be about a little bit of the future of the game and stuff like that. It's really spurned off a recent interview with Ghostcrawler, which was actually in Korea, but it was pretty interesting, and he was talking about a whole bunch of things. So the first thing he said was that Garrosh will not have a replacement as of the end of patch 5.4, and what he means is pretty much there's no more War Chief, which is interesting to say the least, and I think it sets up a lot for patch 5.5. So yeah, pretty much we'll kill Garrosh and then that'll be it, patch over, in terms of story and stuff like that. Now what's interesting is that Garrosh's death will leave a giant power vacuum, because you have the different factions of the Horde, so I guess Vol'jin and Bane, and then the good orcs, well, you know, air quotes, the good orcs, and then possibly Sylvanas taking another side. There'll be something there anyway, and there'll be some sort of internal power struggle. Now, Varian Rin is, as we all know, a bit of a douche sometimes, so there's a good chance he'll just try to go in and wipe everyone out. I think that's actually his plan anyway. So there's going to be a giant war coming in the future, but as far as patch 5.4 goes, really there's not going to be anything else. Now, the future, well, patch 5.5 is definitely going to be a thing, because we know this expansion is only going to be announced at BlizzCon, so there's no way they'll be able to tie it over like a year. With just 5.4, so 5.5 will come, and I think what it's going to cover is pretty much a giant war between Alliance and Horde, but more of an interesting one we've had previously, because I never really think they played that to its full potential. Hopefully we'll be having the Horde sort of struggle, internal struggle, power vacuum, that kind of thing, resolved, while Varian Rin and the Alliance are having a giant fucking big war machine coming towards the Horde, which I think would be just really cool, and it's something we haven't seen done justice or, you know, even done well in Warcraft, despite it being World of freaking Warcraft. They've not been great at the whole war thing, they've been great at, you are like the special ops. Well, sometimes it's nice to see a big full-scale war. That's some of my favourite stuff of leveling up through the Cataclysm changes, was the actual war between the Alliance and Horde. So yeah, I think that'll be pretty cool, and patch 5.5 should be interesting. I do hope it adds good longevity though, because we don't really know when this next expansion is coming out, and that's a perfect segue for me to talk about the next expansion. So it's probably going to be announced at BlizzCon in October or November, whenever that is, I've actually forgotten, and then I'd say that it'll probably come out a lot sooner than other expansions have. Now the reason I say that's because of the Warcraft development cycle. It's really fast now in comparison to what it used to be. You know, we used to just be getting a patch every 6 months and that was what you got. This, you know, nowadays it's a patch every 3 months, and the big patches are just as big as they would have been, so essentially we're getting an extra smaller patch every 3 months. You know, for, you know, quote, free, if you know, not free, but in addition to what we would have previously been getting. So this means they're making content faster, which probably means they'll be able to make the expansion faster. And I would actually say the BlizzCon will happen in October, and probably 5.4 will have been released just a little bit before that, and pretty soon after BlizzCon, I think one of the big things is that they'll be able to sort of blow up the floor at BlizzCon with saying, and we're going into beta in 2 weeks, or something like that. And beta testing for like the usual for sort of 4 or 5 months, and then having it, or not 4, well, however many months, and then having perhaps a release in Q2 of 2013. I think that's actually what the game needs. And the reason why is it gives plenty of time with 5.4. It means that 5.5 is there, and none of this content will get so old that people are ultra bored and leave the game, because the other times when they've had like a year-long break in between expansions, it has murdered the amount of active subs. Now granted, a lot of those people do come back for the next expansion, but there's often quite a lot who don't, and that's the one thing they cannot afford to happen. So yeah, I think this expansion is probably going to be coming a little bit earlier and on a faster cycle than we're previously have been used to, and I think that'll be great. Now speaking of the expansion itself, I am convinced, and I'll actually be pretty disappointed if it's not this, because it's kind of my favourite thing, so there's a little bit of bias there, but I'm convinced we'll end up in Argus, or we'll end up in somewhere in space anyway, and we'll be fighting the Burning Legion, because Rathian was having a big old rant about how they're really the true threat, and they're the, you know, ultra problem, and he's right, they are, and I think they're far more interesting enemies than sort of whatever random contrived thing that Blizzard can come up with. I think when Warcraft does best is actually when it's sticking to the Warcraft RTS or Warcraft book lore, instead of making its own World of Warcraft lore, which I don't think is as well written. I don't know, like, I don't know why I don't think the current stuff's that well written in comparison. Maybe Matsson's got a bit tired recently. Take Thrall as an example if you want to talk about a character that's just been written into a corner and was so overwritten when he was written that nobody really gave a shit about him, so yeah. Anyway, as for the expansion, I think it's going to be following like Khadgar and that whole group that left like 20 years ago, and we've never heard from them since, so I'm pretty sure something interesting will happen there. Maybe Sagaris will be there, although I think that's more going to be the final expansion of WoW. I'd say we'll probably go Burning Legion, then we'll go Old Gods / Emerald Dream, then we'll go and it'll be the final expansion of the final big thing. That's what I think will happen anyway. Today's question of the day: what do you think is going to happen in patch 5.5? Who do you think the new leader of the Horde will be? And just how that whole power vacuum that's been left by Garrosh's death, how do you think that will play out? That'll be interesting to hear. So that's it for today's show. Please like and subscribe because it would help me out a lot, and I'll see you in the next show.